Well, twiddly fucking D, it's your boy Jordan C. In for week 5 recap. That's right, we made it 5 weeks so far, and it is hard to believe that it's gone by so fast, but we still have a good amount left. We still got 9 weeks left in the regular season, plus for those lucky few that get into the playoffs. Actually, wouldn't say few, more than half will get into the playoffs, 7 seeds, another 3 weeks thereafter. So enjoy it while it lasts, guys, because it's still early in the year. But another week or two, and we can no longer consider it early. Paths are beginning to form for these teams, for your team, for my team. Trends are being set. Preconceived notions and predictions from earlier in the year are being proved right and wrong, or at least on their way to be. So let's see what happens. I see a lot of trades going on, a lot of Sajid getting in the mix and having more running backs on in his starting spots as much as he fucking can, which, hey, everybody has different ways to build their teams, and that's the point. So let's see who wins. Let's see what shakes out. He's got a great team, and we got some great games. Believe it or not, I think we have 4 game of the weeks. It would have been easier to say what was the non-game of the week. But we like to focus on the positive here at minimal efforts, maximum effort, minimal results. That's right. So I think game of the week number 1, as much as I would like to, and I don't. I'd rather just have a very easy game, especially when it comes to fucking Alex. Jesus Christ. Game of the week number 1, though, has to be Manny and Kyle. This was even closer and might not have gotten as much of attention, but it was a big one. Kyle needed this game, and he didn't get it, unfortunately. He had Mahomes, and he got 33 points, but he came up 3 short from pulling off the win. Moves to 1-4. Manny moves to 3-2, and the difference was that Mahomes Monday Night Football game, having it come down to the wire, hoping he'll just get a little bit more, and not getting it. I know that's rough, bro, but still, you're still in the mix, 1-4, and we'll get to your game coming up soon. Manny moves to 3-2. Game of the week 2, I do have to at least say, me and Alex know how to put on a party. 153 to 146. I was down 25 headed into Monday night. I really wanted to get this game. I really, as much as it was great and a pleasure to sweep Kyle, I knew that to get a split with Alex would be just as big for me, because I did not want to be swept by him, because then it comes down to tiebreakers, which he would still likely hold anyway, because he's on his way to leading the league in points so far. Anything can happen. Not saying that that's a given, especially with the team that Seed's building, but we even our records at 3-2, and the difference was, of course, Devontae Adams. 32 points after being down 25. It's exactly what I fucking needed, was a big game from him. So that was awesome for me, not so awesome for Alex, but still a lot of football left to go. Game of the week 3, Gus and Sam, the brothers. 5-point game. Now this one would have been a lot more interesting and probably more more notorious if it would have happened and came down to the Monday night game. It didn't even come down to the fucking Sunday night game. So it was actually that good of a game to where we knew who was going to win by the end of the 4 o'clock games. So a 5-point win. Stafford would have been the difference for Sam. He left 7 on his bench. Not saying it was a given. Stafford is an iffy start, but it just didn't end up panning out, because unfortunately, Dangerous is now Disasterous. Game of the week 4, another hidden one. Jeff and Carlos, 159.5 to 142. Now, it doesn't stand out as a huge game of the week, but going into the Sunday night game, it was 120.5 to 109. And it took Kelsey getting 4 touchdowns to get 33 points and equal Josh Jacobs' 33 points, plus another 6 from CEH to hang on. So, yes, it was a 17.5-point win, and he extended his lead. But still, it did come down to that game, and considering how good Josh Jacobs looked, it took every ounce and every touchdown that Kelsey got in order for Jeff to hold Carlos from making the comeback. So, good game there. Unfortunately, though, for Carlos, he moves to 1-4. He's getting in that Carlos territory, and if he becomes the first win for Lewis this upcoming week, I think we have to call him Carlos. But that's a big if. Jeff is 4-1. He has tied for the best record in the league, which is a 3-way tie at the moment. The non-games of the week. Well, one of them probably doesn't care if he's not a game of the week. That's Sajid. 175 points gets him $10. He moves to 4-1. And this was before the JT trade happened. Joel moves to 2-3. It was 175 to 143. Joel got good scores for once. He is, and we'll get to the power rankings a little bit, he's still second to last in scoring per game, but he did score above average in this matchup. The difference here, trades. I mean, Sajid and I and Gus had that huge trade. Eckler did pretty damn good for him, 39 points. But don't forget Alvin Kamara, who we got earlier too, from Kyle, another 25 points. So those two right there, when you combine to essentially have almost 75 points between two players, and then you got 100 from the rest, you're doing pretty damn good. So good to see that pay off, especially considering that out of the three participants in that three-way trade, all three won their games this week. Not saying that equals, that means that it was all a success, all winners and all that, but it's encouraging to see when you have a trade like that, that there can be wins on all sides, and it doesn't just have to be somebody raked the other guy. That's not a good trade. You want to do a trade that's good for you, yes, absolutely, but if you think you're just going to work over the other guy and fuck him over, that's not a good trade. That's just taking advantage. So obviously we want to win the trade, want to come on the plus side of it. I'm not saying that everybody needs to be all sunshine and daisies and shit like that, but a good trade is one that actually works for both sides, because it's what's good for the league, it's good for both teams, and it's good for making sure that there's balance, there's stability. You're not just obviously trading JT for a kicker. So those things are important. And last but not least, we have Hector and Lewis. Unfortunately, Lewis falls to 0-5, fails to reach 100 points again, 96 to 150. Hector beats him by 54. Hector moves to 4-1, which is the last of the three-way tie at 4-1. Difference here is the top three. The top three for Hector were Josh Allen, Dalvin Cook, and DK Metcalf. They scored 95 points within his top three. Lewis had 96. So Lewis would have gotten his first win if he could play his 10 guys against the top three for Hector, and he would have won by 1 point. And that's really it. And it's actually kind of strange. This game was closer than you might think, despite that. That's a crazy stat. But both guys had 5 players who scored under 10 points in this game. So really the difference were the outliers on the high end. They both had some outliers on the low end, but it was that difference which made it there. Because when you think about it, 95, that means that he had 7 other guys that essentially combined for 55 points. That's not exactly that. That's just over 7 points, almost 8 points a game, or 8 points a player. So that's not as impressive as it might have seemed. It was more that Lewis lost this game than it was that Hector necessarily won it. His top players played good, but he didn't get much else. Kind of like the Bucks and Falcons game, if you get my drift. Moving on. Top quarterbacks for the week. Week 5, familiar names: Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, 46 and 33 points, respectively. They play each other this upcoming week. Hurts with 31, Geno with 30, he's becoming a regular. Wentz with 27, he's becoming a regular. Talk about a quarterback that is better in fantasy than in real life. Wentz threw 1 interception at the worst fucking time last week, but he had 27 points and was another top 5 QB yet again. Carr and Cousins tied for 23, rounding out the top 6, technically 7 in this regard because they tied. To date, Josh Allen is still number 1. Lamar Jackson has still retained his top. He's now number 2. He used to be number 1 last week. Jalen Hurts is still 3. Pat Mahomes is 4. Geno is 5 overall in the year. And Joey Burrow, Joey B, and they're at number 6. Running backs. For week 5, Eckler topped the charts with 39. Then Fournette, 37. Derrick Henry, 33. Josh Jacobs, 33. Chubb, 32. Breece Hall making an appearance, 30. Dalvin Cook, 29. CMC, 25. And AK, Alvin Kamara, 25. Jeff Wilson, 24. Tevin Coleman, 23. And I just saw that he's on the block. So if you'd like to fuck your team up and trade for him, by all means, go ahead. And Mostert, 22. Top running backs to date: Chubb, Eckler, Saquon, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, CMC for the top 6. Then playoff Lenny is doing well in the regular season. He's 7th. J. Will, Pierce, Brees Hall, CEH, and Miles Sanders. All right. Moving on to wide receiver. Top 12 wide receivers for week 5. I am pleased to announce that the top 2 for once were mine. Gabe Davis had a monster game with 39 points. That 98-yard touchdown was a thing of beauty. Devontae Adams, 32 points. Kupp, 29. Justin Jefferson, 29. Lockett, 29. De'Ami Brown, surprise appearance, 28. Stephon Diggs, 25. Jacoby Meyer, 25. Mike Williams, 24. Hollywood got 21. And then DK and Amari Cooper tied at 20. To date, though, looks a little different still. Kupp and Diggs still 1 and 2. Justin Jefferson, Hill, Tyreek Hill, that is. Devontae Adams, Hollywood Brown, Waddle at 7. Lockett, Mike Williams at 9. Debo, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then A.J. Brown. So, what are the current power rankings? Got a little bit of mix up in the middle, but the top and the bottom look the same. Once again, Alex is tops. His average does come down a bit. It's more regressing to the mean a little bit. You can't score 200 points every fucking week, as much as I know he'd like to, or 180 in his case to start out. Alex has 160.4, same as last week as far as place. Same for Sam. He's second, 146.6. Sajid, 144.2. He moved up 2 spots, so he is now third in scoring already, and he just got Jonathan Taylor. Fun shit. Carlos, despite being 1 and 4, he actually has scored the 4th most points, 142, and he went down. He was third last week. He went down a little bit. Remember, points scored matter. You can get unlucky and play against some other teams that outscore you, and that can suck. But if you're scoring points, that's where you want to be, right? Jeff is 5th. He moved up 1 spot. Kyle moved down 2 spots to 137 per game. That is 6th. I round out what would be essentially the playoff tree, which would be the top 7 spots. If we're talking about power rankings, so I have 132.2. I moved up 1 spot. Manny moved down 1 spot. Hector moved up, and Gus moved down. So we had a few make 1 spot up or down moves, and then Joel and Lewis bring up the rear with 115, and then paltry 103.2 per game right now for Lewis. Trying to reverse that, see if that trade works for him this week and get his first win. And looking at that, week 6 is pretty interesting. We got Super Bowl rematches. We got Super Bowl history. In fact, there's only 1 game that does not involve somebody who's made the Super Bowl before this year, which I found kind of interesting. I'm sure that, if we looked at it, it probably happened like that a lot, considering a decent number of us have made the Super Bowl. But I do like seeing the rematches. It brings back some pretty good and, honestly, some pretty bad memories. The first one, me and Gus. This is a rematch of Super Bowl 9. Which, for those that might not remember, I certainly do. That was the year that Gus went undefeated, and the Cholo Fit Boys met the McCaffrey Kickassery Factory. And I went on a tear, and I was 7-6, squeaked into the playoffs as a 5 seed, and won my way to the championship and upset him in the Super Bowl. It is a matchup between two-time champs. So I won Super Bowl 7 and 9. Gus won 3 and 10. Right now I am favored by 6. Next rematch, Super Bowl 8, Manny versus Sam. This was one that Sam actually came up short in at the time, but Sam is a Super Bowl champ, a one-time champ, trying to be back-to-back for the first time in history, and he is our defending champ. Manny, he's not absent from being in the championship either. He's a 2-time champ. He is 3 and 2. Sam is 3 and 2, and this is a divisional game. This is fucking huge. Okay. Manny won Super Bowl 8 and 11. Of course, Sam won Super Bowl 12 last year. Right now, Sam is favored by 2.4. Could be a very, very good game there. Next up, we have someone who is not foreign from the Super Bowl, just hasn't won one yet. Alex, 2-time Super Bowl runner-up from Super Bowl 4 and 12. He's favored by 36.7 over a one-time champ, Kyle, and I remember that very well. Super Bowl 6, I was well on my way to enjoying a wonderful year, and Kyle came in and liked it more than I did. And Kyle needs this fucking game. It is a divisional game. Kyle's season is really on the line here. Not saying it's impossible for him to get into the playoffs, sneak in as a 7 seed, but it is stacked against him. If you notice, we have no undefeated teams yet left. We have 3 4-1 teams, which will be whittled down to at least 2, possibly just 1. And we only have a couple of teams that are 1-4 or worse. We have Kyle, we have Carlos, and we have Lewis. And if they get a couple wins, it really evens things out this week. So don't just hang up the phone yet, because there's still some calls to be answered here. There's a lot that can happen, especially if Kyle wants to turn this around. He's going to need to step it up this week. He's an underdog by almost 40 points. It's stacked against him, but you never know what can happen in fantasy. And don't forget, bye week start this week. It's only a couple. I know the Texans, for one, because I have Pierce, and the Raiders as well, because I have DA. But bye week start, and they're important. So cover your shit. Next up, not a Super Bowl rematch, but it's a divisional match, and they're Super Bowl, or they have been to Super Bowls before. I would say they're Super Bowl veterans. Been a little bit, but Hector versus Sajid, 2 4-1 teams. This is going to be big. Right now, Sajid is favored by 21.2. Hector was a Super Bowl runner-up in 10. That was versus Gus. And Sajid is a Super Bowl champion in his own right. That was in Super Bowl 5. So he won Super Bowl 5. Excuse me. Hector lost Super Bowl 10. And they are going at it to see who could possibly be King Dick in the league so far. Next up, Lewis and Carlos. Now, this might be game of the week, WEAK, as I had made the joke in the chat. But something that you all need to remember here is Lewis is a vet in this league. And I know that he's had a lot of bad years. In fact, more bad than good. But he is our OG Super Bowl champ. And before you say, well, yeah, Jordan, that was 13 years ago. Who the fuck cares? He technically won the hardest championship out of everybody that could ever say it, unless we further expand. Not saying that's going to happen. But that was when we had a 14-team league 1 year when we started back in 2010. He won it all. That would have been technically the hardest, because you had to beat out 14 or 13 other teams instead of just 11. So Lewis has won before. He's not completely foreign to it, despite the optics here. But he needs to reverse it quick. Carlos at 1-4 is the 4th highest scoring team in the league. He's favored by over 21 right now. Now Carlos is one who has not even sniffed the Super Bowl. He don't know what it smells like at all. But he has a chance this year because he's been scoring a pretty decent amount of points. So keep your eye out for him. Last but not least is our only matchup that has no Super Bowl appearances in the league. Jeff versus Joel. This is a divisional match. It's very important. Jeff is 4-1. Joel's 2-3. This would be huge for Joel to win. I think Jeff's only loss was actually to Joel, so he doesn't want to get swept, and that would also very much even things up pretty quickly, because he'd be 4-2, and it would almost be like they were matched, because they'd be one game apart, and all it would take is for them to have even records for that tiebreaker head-to-head to come into play. So this is huge. Right now, Jeff is favored by almost 16. All right, so that's about it. I think I've rambled on enough. Check your lineups, check your bench, check projections, check buys, get planning, because these buys are going to hit. And with the injuries that we've already had, it's already been fucking hard to keep up with this shit. So I highly recommend you start making a plan, start having an idea of what's going to happen, and maybe start planning on having to swallow a couple of L's if you know that you've top stacked your team, and this guy right here has an issue next week with buys all over week 7. That's not going to be too fun, but I mean, shit, the rest of the year, hopefully I'll be full strength. So we'll see what happens. There's a lot of different ways you can play the buys, but the thing is, have a plan, stick to it, and make sure that you field a full team as best you possibly can. Hope you all are doing well. Hope anybody that was affected by the storm or still affected has been able to get everything, power back on, back and home, whatever the case is. But other than that, hope y'all have a good rest of your week and a good Sunday. Go Bucks. Fuck the Saints. Peace.